But there are so many Filipinos in the crowd tonight, so many flags. Thank you!
On August 9, 2026, the heartbeat of the National Bank Open came to a sudden, silent halt in just 73 minutes. Inside Sobeys Stadium in Toronto, the energy that had electrified York University's campus for days evaporated almost instantly.
Kamusta tayo ngayon, Toronto?
Alex Eala, the 21-year-old Filipina sensation who had captured the imagination of an entire demographic, saw her career-best 7-match winning streak ended by Swiss veteran and 12th seed Belinda Bencic in a brutal 6-4, 6-0 scoreline. As the final point landed and the second set bagel was sealed, the stadium transformed from a roaring sanctuary into an echoing ghost town. Over 10,000 fans, who had packed the arena for 3 consecutive nights and effectively turned the Canadian venue into Little Manila, folded their flags and quietly filed out. The abrupt departure left the Women's Tennis Association and tournament organizers grappling with an unprecedented dynamic. A single player, ranked outside the top 10, had become the entire show. When she walked off center court, the audience walked out with her, leaving behind an empty arena and an uncomfortable truth about the sport's dependency on a global cultural phenomenon. By the time you finish this story, you will understand how a rising star from Southeast Asia transformed a routine WTA 1000 event into a historic cultural movement, and why her exit exposed a massive vulnerability in professional sports. If you have been following the rise of global tennis, consider joining the community of early believers who recognize how a new generation is redefining the sport's global map. The contrast inside Sobeys Stadium on that fateful Sunday night was stark. On one side of the net stood Belinda Bencic, an Olympic gold medalist and proven champion who thrives in controlled, quiet environments. Bencic is a purist who prefers focused silence, famously showing visible frustration in past tournaments when crowd noise or opponent box celebrations bled into her service motion. On the other side was Alex Eala, a player who does not merely play a sport. She carries the hopes of a nation and a massive diaspora. Over 270,000 Filipino Canadians call the Greater Toronto Area home, and when Eala arrived in Canada fresh off her historic title in Washington, that community took ownership of the event. They did not simply buy tickets, they reshaped the tournament's identity. Families who had never attended a professional tennis match arrived in custom shirts. Banners draped the railings, super fans cheered in whimsical costumes, and the sound inside the arena reached levels normally reserved for a Grand Slam final. Yet this collision of worlds set up an extraordinary narrative tension. Tournament director Carl Hale had 9 of the world's top 10 women's players competing in Toronto. The tournament featured elite Grand Slam champions and veteran star power across every bracket. Yet, the true commercial and emotional center of gravity belonged to a 21-year-old ranked 20th in the world. The tournament had found an absolute blessing, but as Hale and his team would soon discover, an attraction that defines an event's energy becomes a structural vulnerability the moment that player is defeated. The tension reached its breaking point during the round of 16. Eala started the match with trademark grit, battling through early service exchanges and breaking Bencic to stay competitive in a high-intensity opening set. The crowd erupted with every winner, making the stadium shake with chants of support. But Bencic's experience and relentless baseline consistency began to take over. The Swiss star made tactical adjustments, targeting second serves and dragging Eala out of her comfort zone. Bencic edged out the first set 6-4. Then, the crisis point arrived. The second set turned into a clinical masterclass from Bencic, who raced through 6 straight games to deliver a 6-0 bagel. Despite the mounting scoreline against her, Eala's resilience remained intact. There were no dramatic racket smashes or emotional outbursts on court, only ice-cold composure as she attempted to solve a veteran opponent who was playing at peak efficiency. In the stands, the silence was agonizing. Thousands of supporters held their breath, clutching their flags tightly. They had watched her pull off dramatic 3-set comebacks earlier in the week against formidable opponents. They held out hope for one more miracle. But Bencic shut the door decisively. When the final ball landed out, Bencic celebrated her victory and addressed the stadium during her post-match interview. She graciously acknowledged the electric atmosphere, noting that while she knew most of the crowd was cheering for Alex, playing in front of such passion was a unique privilege. But as her words echoed over the public address system, the crowd was already moving toward the exits. The Philippine flags were folded. The sea of red, blue, and yellow disappeared down the concourses. The roar that veteran journalists had called the loudest they had ever heard was replaced by the hollow sounds of empty plastic seats and echoing footsteps. The show was over, and Toronto felt completely hollowed out. To grasp the full scale of what took place, one must look at the hard numbers that document this extraordinary takeover. Before Eala's run, the National Bank Open was already a premier event on the WTA calendar, on track to generate tens of millions in economic impact for Ontario. But Eala did not just contribute to those statistics, she completely redefined them. Her opening match alone drove upwards of 5,000 ticket sales, forcing tournament organizers to abandon their initial plan of putting her on the 2,800-seat grandstand court. They moved her directly to center court to accommodate the overwhelming demand. When her Wednesday night session was officially scheduled, all 10,700 seats at Sobeys Stadium sold out in just 30 minutes. Over 3,000 of those tickets vanished within minutes of her schedule being confirmed by tournament officials. To put that achievement into perspective, commentators noted that Serena Williams, arguably the greatest icon in modern tennis, was the only other player to produce a Wednesday night sellout of that speed in Toronto over the past 2 decades. A 21-year-old rising star from the Philippines had matched the drawing power of the legend herself. The cultural shift extended well beyond the ticket windows. Halfway through the tournament, food vendors inside the venue added authentic Filipino chicken, adobo, to the food court menu for the first time in the event's history. Tournament director Carl Hale admitted it was the first time he had ever seen an international tournament modify its culinary offerings mid-event, specifically because of one player's fan base. The adobo was not just a meal. It was a symbol that the tournament's traditional identity had yielded to a dynamic new cultural movement. Watch parties sprung up across Manila, and sports icons like Andy Roddick openly marveled at the sheer scale of engagement, noting on his podcast how incredible it was to see thousands of people filling arenas across the globe just to watch a early-round tennis match. Eala was being compared to legendary figures like Manny Pacquiao, functioning as a bridge between an elite Western sport and a nation hungry for authentic sports representation. However, when Eala exited, the numbers and the atmosphere crashed back to reality. The lines at the adobo stalls disappeared. The social media commentary shifted from ecstatic celebration to quiet sadness. The tournament had enjoyed record-breaking momentum, but it was forced to confront a troubling reality. While top-ranked players provided prestige, Eala provided the soul, the revenue spikes, and the raw audience engagement. When she walked away, the energy walked away with her. Following her loss, Eala reflected on the week with deep maturity. She recognized that she was part of something far larger than an individual tennis career. She shared that she felt like a drop in the ocean compared to the vast pride of the Filipino people, noting how beautiful it was to see tennis become a unifying medium for families and communities to celebrate their identity. Her words captured the spirit of a movement that transcends rankings and trophies. Her exit leaves the broader tennis establishment facing a profound question. Bencic won the match with textbook tactical precision, securing her spot in the quarterfinals. But Eala won something far more valuable, an unshakable, highly organized global movement that follows her wherever she competes. The tournament in Toronto proved that sports culture is shifting rapidly. The traditional tennis audience is no longer the sole engine of the sport. Dynamic, passionate, and diverse fan bases are ready to fill arenas, break ticket records, and transform quiet tennis centers into passionate arenas. Now, the governing bodies of tennis must decide how to respond. Will the sport adapt to accommodate this vibrant new energy, adjusting its marketing, venue choices, and scheduling to embrace new global audiences? Or will it insist on rigid traditions, letting stadium silence return the moment a transformative figure exits the draw? Is tennis truly ready to embrace the Eala effect? Or will the establishment continue to treat these massive cultural movements as temporary anomalies rather than the future of the sport?